I'll start with a small summary, then I read a piece of The Tale Cathedral by Raymond Carver. Next, it's characteristics, and to finish, I get into the theme and message. This story is about a married couple is expecting the visit of the wife's friend, a blind man. The wife met the blind man named Robert 10 years ago while working for him during a summer. Since then, she has married an officer, divorced him, and remarried the narrator. Throughout everything, the woman kept in touch with Robert. Now Robert is visiting the narrator and his wife following the death of his own wife. This blind man, an old friend of my wife's, he was on his way to spend the night. His wife had died, so he was visiting the dead wife's relatives in Connecticut. He called my wife from his in-laws. Arrangements were made. He would come by train a 5-hour trip, and my wife would meet him at the station. She hadn't seen him since she worked for him one summer at Seattle 10 years ago, but she and the blind man had kept in touch. They made tapes and mailed them back and forth. I wasn't enthusiastic about his visit. He was no one I knew, and his being blind bothered me. My idea of blindness came from the movies. In the movies, the blind moved slowly and never laughed. Sometimes they were led by seeing eye dogs. A blind man in my house was not something I looked forward to. That summer in Seattle, she had needed a job. She didn't have any money. The man she was going to marry at the end of the summer was in officers' training school. He didn't have any money either, but she was in love with the guy and he was in love with her, etc. She'd seen something in the paper, help wanted, reading to blind men, and a telephone number. She phoned and went over, was hired on the spot. She'd worked with this blind man all summer. She read stuff to him, case studies, reports, that sort of thing. She helped him organize his little office in the country social service department. They'd become good friends, my wife and the blind man. How do I know these things? She told me. And she told me something else. On her last day in the office, the blind man asked if I could touch her face. She agreed to this. The narrator is the main character in this short story, and I'm gonna tell about him more in this slide. We found out he's married and has been doing the same job for 3 years. However, the inner characterization of the man is more important in the story. His characterization is conveyed indirectly through his thoughts and attitude. He is an evolving character as his perspective on Robert and blindness changes at the end of the story. The narrator does not only like Robert because he is blind, he is also frustrated and jealous of Robert's friendship with his wife, from which he feels excluded. This can easily be seen through the way he describes his wife's relationship and with Robert and the husband's visit and the conversation. For example, on page 6, line 11 to 40, they talked about things that had happened to them, with them, the last 10 years. I waited too vain to hear my name on my wife's sweet lips, and then my dear husband came into my life. Robert is a middle-aged blind man whose wife recently died and who lives in Seattle. His physical features are reproduced by the narrator. This blind man was in his late 80s, a heavy, bald man with bent shoulders as if we were carrying a large weight there. He was wearing brown pants, brown shoes, a light brown shirt, a tie, and a sports coat. Spiffy. He also had this full beard. The story is about true blindness and the effects of emotional contact. It is a rediscovery of human value, and that could be a theme. The story suggests that the meaning of the true blindness does not only refer to physical disability, it refers to the people who cannot see the world from the perspective of others, and it can be overcome through emotional contact. And we can see that in the story because the narrator gains insight into his own life when he draws a picture of a cathedral with Robert, realizing for the first time that looking inward is a way to gain greater knowledge and a deeper understanding of himself. Robert too gleans insight from the drawing. It's unlikely that he was able to see what the narrator drew. He shares the experience of the narrator's awakening. The narrator's mere act of retelling the story of his epiphany helps him make sense of his newfound understanding, even though his narrative is choppy and rough, and he frequently interrupts himself to make a defensive comment or snide a remark. He guts the story out, passing along some of his insight to us. And the narrator doesn't fully understand what happened when he closed his eyes and drew the cathedral, but he knows that it was an important experience.